When Remedy first announced a co-op shooter set in their Control universe, I think we were all a bit confused. I know I was, but as a huge fan of that universe, I was open to anything while eagerly awaiting a proper sequel. Then once they revealed the gameplay, I couldn't help but think, who asked for this? Who the hell is this for? Well, for me I suppose, because despite some reservations, I was still fairly excited to play this one. Again, I really love this universe. Control is one of my favorite games of the last 10 years, so even though my intuition was sounding the alarm, and it's usually pretty reliable if I do say so myself, I was all in, blinded by IP recognition alone like a proper consumer. Hell, I was adamant about buying it on Steam even though it's available on Game Pass and PSN, just to support the team. But as the day approached, that intuition kept gnawing at me, and I decided to play it on Game Pass PC instead. Sadly, I'm glad I did. FBC Firebreak is a very weird game, and no, I'm not talking about its quirkiness or all the obvious silly fun it's trying to have. What I mean is, I truly do not know why this game exists. Like, it's late to a party that's been going on for 15 years, and it showed up with a case of beer no one even likes. It brings absolutely nothing to the table we can't find better elsewhere, while criminally underutilizing its source material. Look, I respect that Remedy basically gave us a live service game that isn't shoving FOMO microtransactions down our throats, but I do not believe that it was made as a passion project by the team or as a love letter to the fans. It reeks of a studio that needed to pad their quarterly earnings, so they looked at their assets and said, hey, we can flip that into a standalone throwaway product. This thing will lose all support in a couple of short months once the player base is gone, which, trust me, this game would be dead on arrival if not for the day one availability on Game Pass and PSN. But did I have fun with it? I mean, a little, at least after the first day of constant server disconnects, but even that only equates to about maybe 10 hours of playtime. There is just nothing to this game. It almost feels like an early access indie title from a first-time developer. In fact, if it wasn't reusing all the Control assets within that engine, it'd likely be a miserable experience. The gunplay is awful. Everything looks, sounds, and feels weak as hell even after you've upgraded it, and then it's just your standard selection of like 6 firearms. The classes, while showing some interesting role possibilities, never get a chance to shine due to some of the most basic and unoriginal mission design you'd find in a game like this. The difficulty is non-existent, with the first few options being so brain-dead, they might as well not even exist, and the higher tiers quickly becoming trivial from some hilariously overpowered perks. It's not an exaggeration to say that within 3 hours or so, you've seen it all, and by 10 hours, there's legit nothing left to do, ironically making this reduced price game an overpriced product. Frankly, this one really upset me. It feels like a cheap cash grab meant to trick fans of Control, and what's perhaps even worse, actually does damage to the IP as a whole. Even if I'm wrong about that, at its core is still a mediocre objective-based horde shooter, one that I'm certain has already been forgotten only a week after launch. Besides the assets themselves, this thing is as much in the Control universe as Street Fighter is. There's next to no correlation, and shame on Remedy for pretending this is some passion project. If you're already subscribed to one of the services offering this thing, then I guess give it a go. Otherwise, I'd skip it, and it really pains me to say that. I'd instead recommend you pick up Control and have a much better time. Okay, so there's really not a whole lot to cover here, but as usual, let's quickly talk about the performance. For the first 2 days, the servers were a fucking mess, and there was this constant blue light flash when running around every area, but that seemed to clear up by day 3 after a patch. As for the game itself, I'm on a 5070 Ti in 2K resolution, and it ran pretty great at max settings, with ray tracing cranked up and ray reconstruction enabled. I was hitting a solid 70 FPS with DLSS set to quality and frame generation off while streaming and recording. With frame generation enabled, I never dipped below 120 and felt zero input lag. Playing offline, I maintained 120 FPS even in DLAA. Unsurprisingly, the ray tracing in particular is a standout here. The way light fills space, how well enemies eerily glow in the dark, and admiring the bounce light from all the effects flooding your screen is a visual treat. Control was a major showcase title for ray tracing back in 2019, so it's an expected feature here in Firebreak. Even the visuals themselves are more crisp and feature a wider, vibrant color range. That said, the environments themselves are far more static than in Control. There's no destruction, furniture isn't exploding into a million pieces, and debris is virtually non-existent. It's a disappointing downgrade since witnessing the oldest house in ruin after an encounter was such a standout, feeling like a scene from The Matrix. Still, it is a great looking game and runs good on modern hardware. Right, so really that just leaves us with the gameplay, because surprisingly, there is absolutely no story or lore to be had here, which is a choice, I guess. You're playing as a member of the oldest house's Firebreak branch, a special unit that acts as both first responders and crisis containment. You begin by choosing your crisis kit, which is the tool you'll be taking into a run, each filling a different role. There's the fix kit that's used to repair objectives, build turrets, and whack enemies with a big wrench. The jump kit that's used to charge objectives, spread the shock status effect, and rocket jump. Then finally the splash kit, which is basically a super soaker that applies the wet status effect, washes ailments off allies, and acts as the main support role. Besides that, you choose a firearm, a grenade type, a loadout of perks, and you're ready to take on a job. Jobs are the different missions you'll be completing with your team, each with multiple stages to clear and objectives to complete. The general flow of these jobs is arrive at a location within the oldest house, complete some basic objective, move deeper into the area, and finally run all the way back to extract once the job is complete. All this while the hiss continue to spawn in waves and do their best to undo all your handiwork. Throughout every job you'll come across different research materials that increase in rarity depending on the difficulty setting, acting as the currency to upgrade and unlock more equipment or cosmetics, so long as you're able to successfully extract with them. So at first glance, all this seems fine. Pretty standard stuff here, right? You got multiple difficulty settings, complete with modifiers called corruptions, which have their own settings as well. You have multiple currencies to farm from each job, giving you a good reason to go back and replay them at the highest difficulty to unlock better equipment and perks. There is also a clear vision of role dynamics and build variety within the crisis kit and perk systems. Seems like a home run. I mean, it's nothing groundbreaking, but so long as it's got solid gunplay that utilizes the unique world of Control with big set-piece objectives and crazy modifiers, this game can really carve out its own niche. Well, my fellow Control fans, it doesn't do any of that. At all. It's about as subpar as any co-op early access indie game you'd find on Steam, completely fucking wasting the source material's potential. Let's start with the root of the issue, the jobs themselves, of which there's only 5 and they're all pretty bad. The objectives range from fixing or powering up equipment several times, shooting something off the surface like sticky notes or tumors, and transporting items from point A to B. There's one actual boss, but it's just another repair than activate equipment minigame, and if you were excited to see the objects of power return, well here they're just basic bitch enemy modifiers that you destroy with a common weapon found within the location. This mission design is so basic, so bare bones, that even though the crisis kits do have clear roles to fill, they never truly feel meaningful. Okay, sure, the fix kit can fix things without being shocked by banging it with a wrench, but any other kit just enters this piss easy button mash minigame of spamming Q and D. The same goes for objectives that need to be charged. Sure, the jump kit can simply zap things to full, but again, the other kits just mash Q and D all the same. There's no real need for an optimized team composition when the alternative is knowing how to press 2 different buttons in sequence. I get that they're trying to capture that frantic chaos of something like Helldivers, where you're fumbling to input the proper sequence under intense circumstances, but it's never that intense here, nor is it difficult to clear any intensity that may arise. There's really no stakes to any of it, enemies don't spawn often enough to overwhelm you, and there's very little in the ways of resource or crisis management. The different difficulty settings do very little to alleviate this, with the pointless option to first choose a level which determines how many objectives a job will have and how far into the area you'll go. This has no purpose other than to pad the playtime, since a level 1 job is finished in like 5 minutes and will leave you feeling like you just wasted your time with how brain dead it was. As it is now, it only serves to segregate the already small population further, with too many variables within the matchmaking. The same can be said for the actual difficulty settings, with easy and normal seemingly made for people playing this thing on their second monitor while primarily watching a movie. The only thing resembling a challenge is playing on extreme before you've unlocked many perks, but with how plentiful the currency is, you'll have all the best equipment and perks within only a few hours, completely trivializing even the hardest encounters. The corruptions themselves are the most checklist of modifiers imaginable, like increased enemy health, shields, and speed. There are the slightly more creative ones, like the red light that deals damage if you move, but again, this is all a huge joke if you consider the source material. The way you get rid of them is even stupider. There's several guns lying around each area that shoot black rock, which destroys the object of power, while it follows you around the entire time floating out in the open. Brilliant design, my dudes. The objects of power should have been the main events, the objectives. we should be trying to capture and contain them while dealing with crazy, supernatural, world-altering events. Yes, I know things like the furnace and the chairlift are OOPs themselves, but delivering items to them is such a boring fucking way of handling such unique paranormal entities. Honestly, there really isn't much more to talk about here. I mean, I could explain that each area has shower stations we have to power and repair, which act as the primary source of healing. There's ammo stations that function the same, also utilizing the button mash minigame to restock. I really cannot emphasize enough just how shitty the gunplay is. There's very little feedback, and the sound effects are terrible. It just doesn't feel good when you click, and it's the main draw of the game. You know, a first-person shooter. There's also secondary and ultimate abilities each kit gets that's nearly useless anyways, because by the time you have them, your perks will be so overpowered that you'll kill most groups as they spawn in. Like, look at this. Here was my gameplay just about 4 hours in, utilizing the incredibly broken fire and impact perks. There's other equally broken synergies as well, which is fun, I like being overpowered, but the combat sandbox just isn't set up for this. After a while, the only fun I had was getting the increased enemy speed corruption since it required some attention, at least until we found a Blackrock Slinger 5 minutes into the run. Oh, right, even the cosmetics they so proudly exclaim are their only paid content are fucking terrible. The first batch, which was clearly only made to sell a deluxe copy of the game, is full of different versions of all the base models. You guys can't say you're not cashing in on FOMO and other bullshit tactics to then give us paid cosmetics this lazy. I'm sorry, but it doesn't work that way. I don't know, man. The bottom line is this game is poorly thought out, underbaked, somehow underdelivered despite expectations in the dirt, and a clear cash grab that's masquerading as goodwill. You're not fooling me with this shit. Everything about the game shows it wasn't made with the universe in mind. It is again in no way a passion project or a love letter to the fans. It is simply a corporate product repurposing assets and fulfilling a quarterly number padding role. It really upsets me, and I refuse to pretend it's anything more than a mediocre co-op shooter. It pissed me off immediately with its terrible server instability and matchmaking issues. Slowly started to pique my interest once I was able to see the vision of role responsibilities and build variety, then slapped me the fuck back down to earth after I had seen it all and broken the entire game within about 5 hours. The sandbox of its objective structure just isn't deep enough to provide the opportunities to utilize even half of the ideas presented within its kit or perk systems. It adds nothing to the Control IP, only blemishing it, this failed spin-off that, if anything, caused damage to the universe. It does nothing for this genre of objective-based horde shooters, providing only a few, if any, hours of modern entertainment, so long as your standards are only about waist high. You're better off picking up literally any other game in this space, or better yet, just go play Control. I understand it's free on the 2 big game subscription services, but I can't help but feel like your time would still be better spent elsewhere, and personally, I'd prefer it if you kept your view on this universe positive. So, as much as it hurts me to say, I absolutely do not recommend FBC Firebreak.